should he be more obvious? God could do that. And so then when we ask why he doesn't, I think the question should be, would it be good if he did?
Why isn't God more obvious? If we already know him, then the answer is a still small voice, right? So what about that? Why do you think this is like what we refer to as the problem of the hiddenness of God, right? So how do you
Yes.
approach that question?
Yeah, so we've started with one of the hardest, I think. This is one that I've been genuinely wrestling with. And I think that's what I really want your listeners to realize, and just people to realize, is that this is genuinely a issue that I've wrestled with. And I don't know that my answers are slam dunk answers, and I'm okay with that. I'm comfortable with that because I think the answers that I have sort of arrived at in my own struggling give me clarity. So I have confidence that we can figure this out, and that there are good answers, even though I'm not fully finished wrestling. And man, this is going to have to be something that everybody wrestles with to some degree or other, because I think, there's a way in which when we first come to Christ, you have those times, at least a lot of people report these times where it's like God is in the room, it's like Jesus is sitting with us, and then that can sort of tend to fade a little bit, where we start to feel like our prayers are kind of hitting the ceiling, or maybe there's an airplane. I don't know how the metaphor goes, but right, our prayers aren't making it there. We don't feel the presence of God maybe in the same way that we would otherwise. Well, okay, so things to say that I think would at least be sort of pointers, because I don't think I'm going to be able to give a short answer to this one that's going to be fully satisfying. But I think where I've come to is to ask the question, and this is a good thing for everybody to do when you come across a difficult objection, is to ask, what really is the objection? Like, what is the problem that needs to be solved here? And I think when you think about this, for this to be a problem that's devastating to our faith, it would have to be if God is in some way obligated to be more obvious, but he's not. And I think when you start putting it into those terms, it's really helpful, because, man, to think of God's being obligated to me to be more obvious than he is, that just seems to be such a stronger claim that I don't find that to be nearly as plausible or powerful, such that if God is not as obvious as I want him to be, or as I need him to be, something like that, then he must not exist. And then I think then what we do, and I can tease these out further if you want to, but what I think we need to ask is not just why isn't God more obvious, but should he be more obvious? Would it be a good thing if he was more obvious? And here I'm just not convinced that this is right. It's clearly the case that God could be more obvious. It could be the case that, a guy like Richard Dawkins, probably the most famous atheist alive today, it could be the case that he walks down the street and every bush he passes bursts into flames, and God speaks to him through these burning bushes, and or he has a kind of road to Damascus experience where Jesus himself blinds the eyes of Richard Dawkins. It could be, and God could do that. And so then when we ask why he doesn't, I think the question should be, would it be good if he did? And I just know that there are a lot of people who want that, but I'm just not sure that would bring them to a place of faith. It would maybe bring them to a place of belief. And this is one of the most important things I can say about this topic, is that I don't think God is after us merely believing in him.
Right.
Because if he was, he could get that done in a flat second. And we should be terrified of that option, right? If God's presence became so palpable that he was really there, like, we would all cow in fear, and we would probably intellectually believe that God exists. But that's not what God's after. After all, the demons believe, and they shudder too. And so I think what God is after is faith. And if we keep that in mind, I really think that when you think about how obvious God is, which I think he clearly is obvious to a certain extent, it might be the case. This is really where I've come to after years of wrestling with this, that I think that God's obviousness is calibrated with what he's after.
Mm.
He's after faith, and I think he's as obvious as he needs to be to bring about a place of faith. And we can, of course, resist that easily in some ways. But if we have an open heart and a sort of humble approach, and we want to pursue God, I think he's obvious enough clearly for us to place our faith and follow him.